allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to say a prayer, please stay standing. Yes. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight. We'd like to say thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be here to speak to our citizens of Tate Township and to represent Tate Township. I'd like for you to open our hearts and open our minds and make everything where we make great decisions to better benefit our township. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, praise. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we have just a few minutes here. We have a few things we need to do. Go over here real quick. Our normal minutes of our meeting. Will this time?
Yep. Motion to approve January 2025 bills.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion to approve January 2025 payroll, EFTs, and withholding vouchers.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And then a motion to table the acceptance of the meeting minutes for the January 14th meeting, the January 28th meeting, and the January 29th meeting.
Second.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay, first thing I'd like to do is go into our reports, our monthly reports, and the first one to be speaking will be Chief Cooper.
Good evening. Let's go over the January 25 fire and EMS reports. We did 202 total calls for the month. We had 78 total fire calls. Responded to 6 structure fires, 7 fire alarms. We did have 3 MVA accidents with injuries, where with 1 entrapment and air care was called. We did have 5 MVAs with no injury. We did 33 calls. Go back one there. We did 34 medical assists for the month. Just due to the weather conditions, we were running a chase unit to be able to get crews in and out of some of the dryways where they weren't plowed, assist getting patients from their residence into the ambulance. We did 33 calls in our township, 36 in the village. We did give mutual aid 9 times, and we have received mutual aid twice. Our average en route was 1.2 minutes, and response times was 5.5 minutes. We had a total property and content loss for the month of $2,500 and a save of $299,500 was, and also 1 civilian fire-related injury, no firefighter injuries or deaths. On to the EMS, we did 124 calls on the ambulance side for EMS for the month. 62 of those were in the township, 56 was in the village. We gave mutual aid 6 times and we received it 4 times. Average route time 1.3, on scene times was 5.5 minutes. We did 87 transports to the hospital. And then we had 3,622 ambulance miles for the month of January. Weather was a huge factor for us last month with the snow and the cold temperatures. We did have a few emergency to properties with some water line breaks. We did bring in some extra staffing during the snow. The first, when I was in the height of it there on Sunday, January 5th, we had an apartment fire at Bethel Woods. The road conditions at that time were not the greatest. We were in the parking lot. Fortunately, the fire was contained into a kitchen. The occupant, she was alerted by her smoke detector. They got her up and got out of the apartment, and we were able to contain it right into the kitchen area that night. We thanked our mutual aid departments. We did have Central and Monroe Township in to assist us that night on that fire. had an extra amount of crews here that night, because some of the guys had come and spent the night due to being on shift the next day. They didn't want to be late the next day, so that helped a lot with getting a lot amount of trucks there. Later in the month, we did have an auto accident down on 125 that had an entrapment. Was huge debris field down through that area. We did have one, that was the patient that we did fly out. And once again, temperatures that night were pretty cold. We had the road shut down for over 5 hours, assisting OSP, help provide lighting to keep the road blocked for them. So that was some of the run highlights. Do you have any questions on the January fire report? Yes.
Good report, yeah.
Just an update on the engine tender where we talked about the oil pan. Cummins finally got back to us on that, and they did approve that and warranted all the oil pan and the cost of that. So that cover cost for that pan was $1,062.54. So we had no out of pocket with that. So number 3 there, we did get the mobile radios installed by Mobilecom into the Chiefs vehicle and the engine as well. So those have been installed and are in service. And then the last thing there in our old business is the last month's meeting, you ought to approve the new agreement for the copier machine. That will be delivered and set up tomorrow. And then they're also going to be removing the old copier machine from across the street. It doesn't work no more. So they're going to take that with them. That's all I got under old business. New business, just a personnel matter. One of our full-time personnel, he's suffered some sort of knee injury that's not work-related through the fire service. He is right now going to be off through the 19th. He's waiting an MRI to find out if he's going to have any type of surgeries or what the next steps is going to be. So he's going to be offered 3 shifts. Starting today was the first shift. So I'll keep you guys advised. It's going to be a long-term situation with him. And then last thing I got there on new business is the 2013 and 2021 ambulance are in need of tires. Looking at them, they are pretty bad. The 2021, that's the original set that's on that ambulance. So I would recommend the board look at purchasing 12 of the Continental HDR 225/70 19.5 from Gateway Tire at the cost of $359.62 each, for a total of $4,315.44. The tires will be installed by Bantam Tire at no cost to the township.
I'd like to recommend that the board purchase 12 Continental HDR 225/70 R19.5s from Gateway Tire, cost of $359.62 each, for a total of $4,315.44.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to go into the street department report with Supervisor Mr. Stanley.
I promise you I won't take as long as you do. Starting with the cemetery, we had 7 burials over the month of January. Sold 3 graves, all of which were sold to out-of-township residents. Had 3 Saturday funerals. That's all I have for the cemetery report. Moving on to the road. During the month of January, we ran our routes 8 separate times, used approximately 98 tons of salt. I have restocked 23.88 tons of salt. We're now in the process of taking down, excuse me, taking down leaning trees that we have noticed that are leaning even more with the freezing and thawing. This is going to happen even more. Anybody seeing any leaning trees that are within our right away, please let us know. I'd like to get them out. This is a good time of year to do it. We cannot be ditching and we cannot be burning right now, freezing and thawing. It just can't be done. I don't have any place to put the bad stuff. And it's starting to get better. As long as it keeps staying thawed out, we can start back up on that. With all that frozen ground, we couldn't do any of the road work. In the process of filling potholes, anybody sees any potholes, let me know. Last thing I have is I'd like to schedule the cleanup day. Everything in June is taken, not available for Rumpke. I have already scheduled July 11th and 12th. That would be Friday and Saturday. Would like the approval on that. And I want all trustees to be involved. Come there those 2 days. You don't have to.
Okay, this time I'd like to recommend that we have the township cleanup days for Friday, July the 11th, and Saturday, July the 12th.
Yes.
Yes.
That's all I have, unless you have questions.
Okay, okay, I think it was 2 months ago, well, 7 months, we've been asking about the no parking signs on Gaylord. And I think 2 months ago, we approved it, we just want to follow up on a follow-up day, and what we understand is they have not been installed, so.
I got the numbers for you and where they need to go.
So can we get those up in the next couple of days, next week?
Well, they gotta be ordered, but yeah.
I have to order them and have to get the property located, utilities, all that stuff. It's a good time of year to do it. I'll get right on it once I get the.
Yeah, I just think sometimes you say you made up signs, so.
The no parking, I don't know if I can or not.
Okay.
I have to look at that.
So, yeah, we just need to get that in, so, some residents asking that.
You're gonna report on it? You're gonna tell me?
Yeah, I got you. I'll show you where they need to go.
Just how's the road?
Side of the road. All right.
Please. All right, well, are you finished with your report?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'm good. If you don't have any questions.
What time are the cleanup days? What time?
7 o'clock till 5 o'clock. 10 hours.
Okay, this time I'd like to go to the police report with Deputy Fire Police.
I don't really have any report for you other than I'm here to see if there's any concerns for the sheriff's office's attention or if any citizens got any kind of concern for the sheriff's office's attention.
I have not had any questions. Yeah. Simon, you good? One thing is I did get
What we got?
On Brown Street, Eagle Apartment Street.
Okay.
At the end of it says no parking allowed anytime. Back in there, the Apartment Street, it's hard to hear that.
Okay. I'll have to take a look at Brown Street then.
They just asked, just roll the little off.
Okay. I'll check the signs too, because I've been on Brown Street. I don't remember seeing no parking signs on the streets.
You have one down
There.
there.
Okay. I'll have to take a look at that.
So there's sign where they're parking?
No, there's no sign of the parking now. That's where I began. Down at the end, there is no parking.
So does that, when you put a sign out, does that mean the whole street?
Within a certain footage. I don't know the footage offhand. But yeah, so it's not before the sign. Anything before the sign you can. So a no parking sign is everything past that sign
Right.
is what's supposed to be a no parking.
So if I put it at the
So-
beginning of the street,
Correct.
that would mean the whole street.
That would mean the whole street, yeah. But you would also need one for the other side of the road coming back the other way. Does that make sense? From the dead end of the road.
At the other end of the road.
Correct.
So it takes
Showing-
care of both sides.
Takes care of both sides.
So do they have to approve me putting signs out, or is it just?
It would be the same as what we're doing out there on,
Just check it out.
yeah. So,
He can,
because I'm not aware of any signs out there on Brown Street.
I think you'd like to take a look at it and see what's going on, and see if there's
Yeah.
any.
We can just add,
going on there.
if need be,
There
we
is,
can
then
add it.
we can get back together like we did for Gaylord. And, take a vote, discuss where to put them, and move them out there around, but it's just right now, just control it and see if the activity is.
We can do that.
No, are you finished? Anything that you need to add or anything?
No, sir.
All right. This time, I'd like to move on to the zoning department, which is the Inspector Mr. Baird.
For the month of January, had 3 permits, take actions. One was an ag exemption, 1 zoning permit, 1 7-Eleven transfer, $150 application. Phone activity, there were 19 voicemails, 18 resolved within the month, 1 is left unresolved, which I'll have on my business to talk about. 23 calls received and resolved, and 36 outbound calls. One of those is also on. 3 active violation cases at the moment, and 21 active complaints for investigation. One of those was moved 2.6 miles on the court. Just some quick updates on some of the old business. Zoning Commission meeting on work. We had a presentation by Clarion. It was a very informative presentation. And I have those slides have been made. They're on the website. Almost a video if you want to follow along. And we are still working on drafting updates to the bylaws ahead of any upcoming public meetings that we'll be having to do in support of properties. And the rules that the zoning commission has up here. So regular business meetings now. So that's it for zoning commission. As I said, we continue to work on those. I put in today request for a demo for my day. That's actually what I'm going to look at that one as well as kind of bouncing out permit. I want to get some stuff together on that ahead of potential grants that come out with the health process. So I just want to maybe have something on deck. They open up the application grant. Help with that. Their major continuing is work on accuracy of the zoning map. So far, I've back through 6 properties that need updated here on the map as far as what the county has versus what we have in the records here. Our map is the more official map, but it's very handy to have the GIS system updated. There's so many other places to pull it. We just need to synchronize that. Got to identify which ones are and aren't. Leading into that unresolved case, an example of one that came up here. There's a property on State Route 133, just north of Lakeland Chapel. New owner contacted me about a garage. That property is currently zoned C1. It was zoned from A to commercial A in March of 1973. It's been a store and a gas station that actually pre-existed the zoning. It fell out of use a lot, and it has since then somebody purchased it and they flipped it and remodeled it into a new owner has bought that property. There's some issues with that as far as contractor or not doing permits and doing all the work, but the new owner now is there and living in a house there. And not allowed to do zoning designation. So, in lieu of that, I wanted to bring the idea that we may look to rezone that property back to A to match the surrounding zoning district, since the use has been changed. It wasn't done like a current property. But just food for thought to think about process on that. I wanted to touch base with you before I spoke with any more ideas about how to resolve that problem.
Well, off the memory, being here as a kid, I know that when that was a store, I know they, those upstairs was the residence, there was a store on the low section. And then it was late seventies, might have been 1980 or something like that. Pretty sure it was late seventies, the store closed down and they lived in it for a few years.
It's just never been rezoned to the residential use, ages ago, and, they've done a very nice job. I know the property was near, like, probably torn down, whoever did it, they did a good thing by renovating the building, but, we're stuck with this for zoning.
You saying the A1 or not?
A, that's everything around this property is A, so it would make the most sense to do a zoning map amendment, initiate the process with that back to original zoning that now matches the use of the property. And as he said, there are no underground tanks on the property anymore, that was maybe a time ago. But he's got some survey issues he's gonna have to deal with. So there's like a hanging abandoned piece of property there. It's just cut up. I just wanted to bring that to talk about that, because we may to work with him on. He's not necessarily requesting it to install him, otherwise we're in a violation. I think that it would bring it best back in line. That's all I had on that. And the last note on old business is I did register for the APA workshop. Any other old business items?
Any questions? We're good. Good job.
Okay, on new business, I put some, proposed fee amendment to the fees that were approved. We can talk about it at another time, like, maybe at the next meeting. Table that now. Problem with that.
The February 25th.
Yeah.
Do you want to do all these that you have your A, B, and C? Is that here on your?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about them, in detail. It might be a little more in depth in this.
Yeah, it's so, I'll just make sure you want me to go ahead and table all three of these.
Yeah,
Okay, I'd like to, make a motion to table, the agricultural application fee and the commercial application fee, and commercial industrial site plan review until, February 25th at 7 p.m.
Yes.
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 Next item on new business was the list of kind of hot button, my brain dump of ideas on zoning. Things we need to be putting on with talking about and updating our zoning resolution. I sent you guys a draft of that for review, and feedback and any questions you have on that. All ears. just wanted you to have it, and that was the same thing when I was on the commission ahead of February. Ideas sketch out. Because I did share that as preliminary with the planning consultants, so they're aware, and we're working on putting together a shared document for this and prioritize. So we're preparing to put out the first community survey for the concrete plan. I've sent you all an example survey. Any feedback and improvements on that, just want to get that back over to. We're targeting. That would be kind of in the timeline we put together. We'll be trying to get that out probably by the end of this month. If we can to process moving. And the details about that is, that survey, once we're finalized on it, they're going to put it online on Survey Monkey, and we'll also make a new post on our website. Ask the fire department to share that link also on their Facebook page. And then any other form of digital postings or where we might want to target out paper copies in the drop box that pick up schedule. That things that we need to schedule about how long are we going to let the survey period go for, and what's going to be our non-digital locations, and really need to know where we're going to put it. I was planning to just try to go around local businesses and say, your municipal placard.
Shelby, you can put in this front entryway that flyer stand, you can put some there if you want.
What we could do is, we could think about this and come up with some definite dates for the, 25th locations for the canal.
Wanted to put, am I understanding that you wanted to review the results on March 4th?
They have that kind of, that's our zoning commission meeting. I mean, if we can start the preliminary, but we'll just need to come up with. We're going to call that survey pretty close.
Yeah.
Compile the data.
Do they have a recommendation as to how long these should stay active that they've shared?
No, we didn't really talk. I mean, they may very well run it. Like we may just have collection points, but we may just keep the survey running. But
Correct.
at some point, there's going to be a closure point where we have to start making decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we need to find out what their closure timeline is, so that way, like I said, we're likely to be available for people as long as possible.
Well, and we had kind of mocked up a timeline on that currently, say by around March 27th or so, like right at the end of March, we'd like to have, we put together the public workshop where, we'll represent that, collect data graphically in some way, and, that first public house, like open forum engagement with people to talk about ideas. And that may bring in more people that didn't do the survey. Ultimately, it's all about saturating the community.
So if you would like to get this out by the 3rd week of February, it's obviously if you have feedback to you on any of this by the end of this week, is that sufficient? Like by Friday to you?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I was kind of targeting to say, we have that meeting. So we may just do a little survey. Any opportunity to get feedback from them. Because it's on target with the purpose.
It is. Okay. Very good.
And that pretty much covered all the sub items there. And then last question was, I was asked by Andy, PDC group, to come
There's gonna be like questions.
Yeah, we have to.
It probably wouldn't. What do you think?
I think it's fine. Like, I mean, you might need to speed up the Q&A if that's necessary.
You did a great job.
And that's the end of my new business items. If there's any other questions?
Any questions now, this time?
I do not, thank you.
Your report? Okay, at, this point, we are done with all of our reports and we'd like to move on to the hearing part of we're gonna discuss that, we're just gonna take the table. Yeah, that will give us more time, so that way we leave it as much time tonight for this.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, okay. At this point, is there any public input on the regular part of our meeting that we just went through? At this point, I'd like to move on to the hearing part of the meeting tonight. The zoning case of Burke Road, case number 1794 SV. And as we all know, I was not able to be here on the 29th meeting due to sickness. So what I would like to do is Ms. Steinley stepped in and took lead for that hearing. So at this point, I'd like to suggest that we let Ms. Steinley go ahead and lead this part of it also.
All right, so let's go ahead and just for formality's sake, call to order sort of the continuation of the public hearing from January 29th, 2025. The close of that hearing, I think the formal motion was to, it was a motion for continuance to suspend debate in the public hearing. So just sort of for clarity, what we thought we would do tonight is allow the board, now that our chair is back, to participate in sort of some discussion coming out of that public hearing. John, I know you watched the video, and obviously Rusty and I were here and heard everything firsthand. So
That part right here about the watching video, I just want to make it, that on Monday, February 3rd, at 3:17 a.m., I did watch the hearing for the first time. And then on Wednesday, February 5th, at 9:05 p.m., I watched the video for the second time.
So he is up to speed. So we thought we would open with sort of resuming that debate. And then what we will do is suspend the debate and allow public comment. We would ask that public comment be limited to either anything that the trustees have sort of raised in their discussion or something new. If there's new comments, because we obviously heard from any of those who were here before and have considered that already. So if there's something new that you would like to share, or if our conversation prompts a discussion, we would like to hear that. But we're going to limit time to 3 minutes on anything new, and then we'll sort of go from a high level. If there's anybody that plans to speak on this issue tonight, if you would, please make sure that you've signed in. Anybody need to sign in who hasn't signed in?
I signed it last time, I'll sign it.
You might want to sign
Yeah, if
in.
you're going to speak tonight, if you wouldn't mind signing.
You might want to sign in, because there's.
Just in case.
Just
There we
in
go.
case,
right, it
that you might want to make a comment on.
No wonder I felt that.
Yeah, probably, Okay, so at this time, I would like to ask, whether there's any updates from the staff. I don't know if there's
There's
any.
been,
Share.
there's been one update, from within, really the fire hydrant, information. There has been identified a flusher hydrant directly across the street from the property. I spoke with the fire chief and, we verified that this would be subject to Peyton Rowe approving the installation of the hydrant at that location. Hey, that would indicate the concern of the fire department. Fire hydrant.
All right, so at this time, we will move into debate amongst the board. I think the purpose of this is sort of, I know we've all been pondering this matter, for a bit, so I think I'll just open it to the board here to share any comments, or thoughts that they would like to share based on the hearing testimony that we've received in the open that.
I'm thinking C3. It would be,
It's, I agree. I think C3 is pretty much a wide open sweep. There's, if you just want me to go ahead and go down some bullets and stuff like
Or
that.
you would like to, yeah.
Okay, it's, got a few different points to try to make on, pretty much, let's say 3 different sides of this case. The adjoining residents want to see quiet and privacy, so some don't want to see change. But we all need to know the change is always happening. The trustees, zoning commission, the BZA, we have to prepare for these changes. And in the zoning world, these changes are called conditions and variances. The Claremont County Planning Commission, the commissioners want us to get prepared because change is coming down 125 fast. So with changes comes different opinions. The trustees, zoning commission, and BZA are here to serve the people, and that's all the people that's involved. That means every property owner has a right to sell if they want. It's well known for several years now that 80 to 90% of the township residents want to sit down restaurants. That's the number one request that we hear. These restaurant companies want to see 3,000 cars a day down 125. Presently, we are about 2,600 cars a day. So if no one wanted change, in 1998, 1999, we wouldn't have Burke Road properties. And we all can agree that Burke Road properties was a definite plus for the township. But to meet these requirements means that more residential growth. And the township say they want to keep us as an agricultural residential township. Mr. Gibbs with Axel Enterprises is bringing residential housing into this area and helping us fulfill that request. But as for the C3, I mean, that's a lot of what ifs, maybes, could be's, strong possibilities. And the board, in my opinion, cannot give a wide open zoning on a maybe. That doesn't look out for the best interest of the residents. That's why it is emphasized at the zoning commission, and it's emphasized all the time that an accurate project site plans are so important. And like I said, it's the Burke Road residents request privacy noise reduction, which can be given with evergreen buffer. And if you look at our zoning code, let's see, Article 6, Section 6, A3, and that is your C2 category. We'll also refer back to Section 5B1 of our zoning regulations, which goes back to our zoning code here. Let me see. And what those do is, I mean, some of the requests that are here made by Axel Enterprises is that they want outside storage. But it clearly states here, and it's page 20 of our code. It's section 6, A4. It says automobile, truck, trailer, farm implements, establishments for display, hire, sale, or major repairs, including sales lots, provided all operations other than display or sale shall be within a completely enclosed building. The outside storage, the C3, like I said, leaves too wide open of a do what you want when you want, and that's not looking out for the best interest of the whole township. And then the other thing I was talking about are the tree buffers. If you look at section 5, it's page 19. You look at section 5 under commercial C1, and it's B1. And then it says, let me see, on statement number E, it says, when permitted neighborhood shopping centers, borders, and district zones of residential use, there shall be a buffer screen to provide adequate sight, noise, and air pollution barrier between the neighborhood shopping center and any adjacent residential district. Depressions, raised berms, landscaping, fencing, and other combination, therefore, and are satisfactory methods to create such a barrier. Where a landscaping buffer screen is used, an evergreen planting screen shall be used to provide an adequate barrier. The plant material used shall be a minimum height of 4 foot at the time of planting and shall be planted in an arrangement in order to provide an immediate effect. I understand that some people don't want to see change in this area, but it's the plan that Mr. Gibbs sent us shows of his building. Shows a very nice building. Now there's some other concerns that the people have, and I have to agree with them. They need to be addressed. So I feel if we do a PUD, because the site plan we don't have right now does not give any real definite. And that's what we need to see what's going to go there in the future. Because I mean, there's almost 12 acres there, so it's quite a bit of land to just leave wide open. And as for the noise and the visual of everything, the residents have excellent concerns to be addressed. So I think the tree buffers and stuff would take care of those concerns from them. And Mr. Gibbs had mentioned that approximately about 2.5 acres of that is like really usable for building and stuff, because it's where it's flat, and according to his topography that he gave us, it should, where he gave the buildings and the parking lot and everything. And again, the way that property is sloped off really bad, it drops off really quick. I don't remember the exact amount of footage, because I pulled the topo, but it's, but what I would suggest, if we need some, if you would put, if you'd be willing to put, he said that 2.5 acres up there at the top of the flat would be, the really prime spot to put stuff. I think it needs to be designated to that 2.5 acres up there, which he already mentioned. Like any future growth or anything like that. He was talking about maybe putting up some future buildings and stuff later on. He doesn't want to leave it, limited. But that 2.5 acres, because if you add up the site plan that he already has of this building, just looking at the parking lot and everything, it's approximately about 25,350 square feet by the measurements that's on his print. That's only 1/2 acre. So if he had 2.5 acres, that should give him plenty of time to do it. But also, you have to keep in mind the visual with it being, it's not like we're dealing with flat land. So we also have to take into consideration the visual of the adjoining residents. I know other cases, where there's 10 adjoining properties, and normal cases where it's unanimous that all of them don't want it. There's been cases that have been turned down, but I can see Mr. Gibbs want to be here. But I think that the building and everything he had would be a benefit to us. But we have to, like I said, we have to take in concern of the residents, because we have to consider all.
And with the site plan here, I feel that it could be flipped. It could be flipped, and that way just all this parking units, you see there was like 30-foot buffer already.
Yeah, and there was what, 290.6 feet from the corner of his building to the property line up against the cemetery. So I mean,
the site plan flipped it. That way, back in here, it's through the parking, you got that 30-foot tree behind the cemetery, that's block all of it.
yeah, and that's a natural tree buff, and that way it's at least part of that property where if there's any future growth to be put on that section, he already has a natural tree buff, and that wouldn't be adding any expense to him.
So you also can do then, you also can do a tree buffer, like surrounding what he does build, or in your opinion, is it sufficient? Is the tree buffer that sort of sits down by the creek in that?
Well, he puts it around the
I went down and I looked at the site, and one of our concerns, my concerns this here is of Claremont County made a mention about the flood zone and everything. And I don't want to try to make it to where Mr. Gibbs can't use his lower section of his property, because if he buys it, he has a right to use it. So what I was thinking is, if he put a tree buffer, down along, not up against the creek, so let's say 50 feet back from the creek or something, put a tree buffer down there, so that way if you did put something down there, that would obstruct the view of all the residents around. And then, like I said, it's up where his buildings are and stuff like that, he's asking to possibly put a fence or something like that around, and like a fenced in area up by his buildings. But if he put, let's say he runs off the proposed location where he has his, which is on attachment number C, shows where his buildings and stuff are. And this is just an example.
see, again, if he closes here, he's got a good buffer here, he only have to do that.
Yeah, he would only have to do it on the residents facing Burke Road. Let's say he put an L-shaped type of trees. It is, I think it's the 4th page back from the end to the very back. It's the last. He has it's labeled attachment C.
Got it.
Okay. But if again, to try to address the concerns of the residents and try to accommodate what his requests are, is if we put, like I said, if they put a tree buffer going from, like any adjoining Burke Road properties. Let's say 50 feet from the edge of his building or parking lot. That would give room for like let's just give for an example, white pines, blue spruce, they all grow about 20 foot across the base. So if you figure 20 feet and then have it 50 feet from his parking lot, it gives plenty of room for growth for the trees. That way it don't interfere with his parking lot or anything like that. But if he took it on, let's just say the east side, and according to this map, you're following Poplar Creek. That'd be the easiest way to describe it. And that way, any growth that he would put on the upper end, up by the cemetery, that way it would block the view also of the residents. And so that way he can use his upper part, because if you put one row of trees down lower by the creek, they only get 30 foot tall. And if you look here, the topo graph here, it drops from 810 to 820. So there's 10 foot right there. So there's a pine tree grows, let's say 25 foot, 30 foot. If you only put one row down low, that means everything up high on the upper half of the property will still be seen by the residents. And that's why I was suggesting if we put them down low, a row of them down low by Poplar Creek, that way Mr. Gibbs can still use the lower section, and it's not buying land for nothing that way. And then if you put them around his building, L-shaped around the right side of his building, looking at it from 125, and then behind his building, and then when those get 30 feet tall, it will block all his buildings and stuff like that. So that, again, it's giving the residents what they want. What they're asking for is giving him what he's asking for also.
Right, and lower, the trees there also.
Yes.
Good block.
That's all, as of right now, that's all the comments I have on that.
So I have some thoughts too. I think, we've said it before, I feel like we said it at the last meeting, and it's sort of a unique time in the township, because I think over the last couple of years, we've seen the importance of good zoning, good zoning administration. And I feel like that's why we've sort of decided to focus on, we were talking about before, updating the zoning code. John, I would echo what you said, that I do think the township is likely to see an increase in growth. I think these are questions that, we're sort of going to have to answer. And I think that naturally brings some level of tension or growing, right, as to people's enjoyment of their property, some of the rights that you found, the desire to sell, desire to buy, things like that. But one of the things that we're looking at, and the purpose of the land use plan is to be is to be able to understand what the township wants and where it wants it, right? Where do we want to encourage that commercial growth, or that office building growth, or that residential growth? And what does that look like? I think that, we can all say that we're excited that Axel Enterprises is interested in putting its headquarters in Tate Township. I think we all agree that commercial growth can certainly have positive impacts on the community. So long as the location, though, is appropriate and that it's positively affecting the community, just as the business will do well. And I think that's sort of the question or the tension that at least I'm struggling with. I won't speak for you guys. I certainly, though, with that excitement of having, a headquarters to come to Tate Township, I certainly do appreciate the testimony of the surrounding property owners. Completely understand, the concerns that were raised at the last hearing related to noise and light, and sort of that, the noise and light pollution and the change of use that would come from a property being rezoned from agricultural to commercial, or whatever that might be. Do also appreciate, in some of the letters, I think that we've been presented with, those who have said that they they expressed a desire to see growth, but they also asked, for oversight given its location. I think one of the things that I pondered a lot about following the last public hearing was the uncertainty, or the number of unknowns that exist. And John, you sort of touched on this as well. I think that there's a lot of questions about how Axel may grow, in the future and what that would look like for this particular parcel. And of course, there are going to be unknowns in a business. You don't know what's gonna happen. And so I do appreciate that sort of desire to keep things open-ended, to allow for that growth. But at the same time, I think we do have to be cautious because we don't know what the land use plan, the land use planning we're about to engage in will show for sort of this corridor. I think that, there's a likelihood that it will be perhaps more commercially based, given that it's on a 4-lane highway and given that there are some other businesses around that. But honestly, we don't know. And there is residential, this property backs up to a residential area, and I think we have to consider that. So in looking at what Axel submitted, and what they're asking to build and perhaps where they're expecting to grow and what they're expecting to do, I don't know that their current use or even their sort of potential future use fits within any of our currently defined commercial districts. I know that when I was looking at sort of the definitions, when you look at a C1, a C2, or a C3, there's nothing that expressly defines a headquarters or an office building kind of service. C1 has like a personal services use, which potentially could apply because obviously you're providing, you're in a service-based business, so that is a potential fit. C2 provides for a carpenter-based business, which again sort of touches on some of the things that Axel does. But even if we accept those as being, kind of the current scope of what Axel does, that's looking at a C1 or a C2. When you look at a C3, that really gets into potentially some what ifs with, I think it was a trucking business was discussed, wholesale was discussed, perhaps some sort of storage, like lumber storage, but even that doesn't fit squarely with the way this is defined within our C3 district. I would note that a C3 does not permit storage of heavy equipment, and that given the proximity to a residential neighborhood, that's probably not a good use for this particular parcel. I think I would echo what John said, that I think it's important to take some steps here to try to balance sort of the wants of each of the different uses and take some steps to separate the commercial business use with the neighboring use, to the best, as well as possible anyways, with some additional conditions and to also make sure that some of the things that were discussed by the Claremont County Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission, some of those conditions or concerns are really adequately incorporated in anything that's happening on that parcel. So natural buffering, I think, needs to be considered. Setbacks, perhaps the fire hydrant, which we did just get an update on, so that's good that is certainly a possibility. But I think, when you sort of, at least when I look at all of these things and I'm sort of trying to balance what makes the most sense and what sort of balances the rights of each of these entities, for me, I do think that planned unit development is a more appropriate zoning category here. And I think the reason that that's important is to understand, first of all, clearly define the permitted uses, because again, I would go back and say that I don't know that what Axel Enterprises is currently doing, putting aside what the potential is, falls squarely within any of our categories. And I think it's important to have sort of those definitions. And to ensure too that there's a clearly approved plan in use that's set forth. I think that the planned unit development does allow sort of the oversight that I know is mentioned in at least one of the letters that we received to ensure that there's a balance of sort of the rights and needs there. This property does have a number of unique features. I think, you've got sort of that upper 2.5 acres that is easily built upon, but then, there's the steep slope that will have to be dealt with. There's the potential use of the lower land. I know there's some sensitivity around Poplar Creek, and the fact that it flows into Harsha. which I think, you know, Mr. Gibbs did address at the last hearing, that there was a testing station not far from there, far from this parcel, which I think is a positive. But I feel like all of these things sort of need to be spelled out, and I think it's important that they're spelled out on the front end and sort of clear and everybody understands the plan, as opposed to a blanket redistricting, where, you know, once it's redistrict for any of these districts, anything within that definition there is fair game. And I think given the nature of this parcel and where it's at, I think we would be better served to make sure there's a clear plan at the beginning, before moving with just a blanket redistricting. So those were my initial comments.
Well, you're,
Gather on for a minute there, but that's sort of the way that, I see it and what I was.
one point that if I may add, you said something about the storage. I forgot to say something about this. It's like his proposed building right here is a 40 by 80, and give an example. If he just moved it a different, even if he kept it where it's at, if he put the tree buffer, let's say a tree buffer up, I say 50 feet from his building or his parking lot, all the way around that, he could extend out the back, just out the back side of that building, and have one side open for outside, not outside storage, but it'd be enclosed storage.
Covered.
And a tree buffer, that would give him what he's asking for, if I remember correctly, I thought he said it was for tree lumber and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the tree buffer would also stop the residents from seeing it. So again, I think that, and he's not having to put up a $200,000 building just to store lumber in it. It's just a little addition, a couple little walls off the backside and a roof. Yeah. So I forgot to mention that, so I just wanted to add that.
Does anybody on the board have any further comments or thoughts that they would like to share before we sort of, open it to the public for comments?
And let me make it sure, we are going to have Mr. Gibbs come up and speak, so we can ask him some questions also.
Yeah.
At this point,
Any other questions
No.
before I move? Okay, so then, at this point, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the debate up here amongst the board, and return to public testimony for additional information. We'll mirror sort of the process that we did before, where we start with the applicant and then move to the public. So what I would ask is if anybody on this list who plans to testify, including the applicant, I'm gonna go ahead and swear you in. So if you would please stand up and raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you, be seated. Okay, so if we would then, just as a reminder, we will now be hearing public testimony. We're gonna start with the applicant. We're going to keep it to.
Point of order,
Yes,
you gotta close that motion.
thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Yes.
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 Ahead of myself. So we're gonna limit public testimony again, to 3 minutes. Hopefully that'll be enough time, and if we need to allow a little more, the goal here is to hear from folks while making sure that, we just keep moving along. So let's go ahead, and start, with Mr. Gibbs. You want to start?
You want to ask me questions or you first?
What would you prefer? Your preference?
We can make this a discussion. That'd be fine with me.
Okay.
As far as the things that I have to say, they've already been addressed by by the parties that we have reached out to in the zoning commission and the county and fire department, all them. They've already answered all the things that I would have to say. So I'm open to discussion. I do have some comments about buffering and stuff like that.
Well, John, do you have specific questions that you wanted to ask, and maybe you didn't get the chance last time?
It's about your background. I know you mentioned that you live here. Approximately how many years have you lived
I moved here in 2020. My wife's been here since 2000.
Not asking her age.
She's young. She wouldn't care to say it.
I don't want to put you in the hard spot. Okay, and how many years have you been building in Pig Township?
Well, if you include our house, 2020. We've been remodeling our house since 2020. I built our first house
Just approximately, don't have to do that.
2021, somewhere around there.
And approximately how many houses do you think you might have just built?
In Tate Township or including the village?
Pig Township and village.
Over a dozen. Or around a dozen. I own a dozen more lots. And we're starting duplexes within the month.
Okay. That's all I have. It's like I said, he's already answered your questions. His yard, some other things he's thinking about doing. Okay. The building that you proposed, okay, you give us two different, the first one never had like floor plan.
Yeah.
So the fact that you gave us that floor plan, that is pretty close to what you intend on building there.
That is the building. I've paid money for them plans. I don't plan on changing them, other than minor edits for whatever code reasons we have to have.
Okay, I'm done. I have no questions.
I don't have any questions, but I'd
Okay.
like to hear.
Yeah, I think that it's important to note that a proper buffering is a condition you can put on any commercial stamp. It doesn't have to be a PUD to require the buffering.
Yeah, that's why I said it's
Yeah.
C1.
Yeah, C1, any of the commercial
Correct.
stamp. You know, I think that a PUD does complicate things a little bit. Reason being is that you're making an individual rules and zoning for each plot of land, and if you continue that habit as more businesses come in, you're going to complicate and have all these rules, and that administration is going to have to manage. And so I've mentioned this to Shelby and to Kristen as well, that there's a protection in your guys' zoning resolution. And so your new one that you guys are doing. And if I change use, I have to reapply for a zoning permit. And so if I put a gravel parking lot down at the base, I have to go to Shelby for a change of use. A change of use would have to follow the current zoning resolution. So I think it's important to note that we are in the middle of a new zoning resolution that is not going to look like the current zoning resolution. So there's some protection there for the township if you guys want to keep me at bay, for lack of better words. So I think that's important to note for you guys to understand is that your current resolution does say what it says. I've given you our plan. You know, people have mentioned that what if I sell to a gas station owner? That would generate a new permit and a new change of use, which would have to follow the current resolution. That would not be grandfathered in to what you guys are doing today. So, but other than that, I think it's something for you guys to think about too, is that the fact that the township's in the current change of zoning resolution is important to think about, and what kind of abilities that gives the township to do. What is your purpose for a PUD? I guess that's what I'm asking is what's the main goal for a PUD?
Well, anytime there's multiple buildings, and like I said, I know you only have two here, but you said there could be a possibility of some being built.
I do want to address that too. I finance all my buildings. I can't build buildings anywhere else other than those two right there, because it's in a floodplain.
But if anytime there's multiple buildings and stuff like this, it's on a piece of property, it always falls underneath. So we're just trying to follow. My idea here is to try to follow the same footprint that it should have been done from the very beginning. It's even I've asked outside the township at other townships, and they even said that if it's something like this was proposed in their township, but they would even go PUD. So, like I said, I've looked out and asked other opinions, and I know they don't live in our township, but it's like just to make sure that I am looking at this correctly, and like I said, it's, when I see this, any multiple building complex has to be, it should be a PUD. And it has not done it that way in the past, but again, we are here to make sure we do it correctly this time, because we are responsible to make sure the best of our ability. And like I said, this whole project should be a PUD.
So I guess the question for us is, what does that look like as far as the application goes?
What do you mean by that? As far as like, how would you switch gears
Are
now?
we going back to the county?
No, my understanding is, that you don't have to start over from scratch if this is something that you're willing to consider. My understanding, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, we can, we have the authority to grant, to approve the recommendation with modifications, correct? And one of the modifications can be, approving a different zone change, or zone designation. I think with a PUD, you know, we would have to pause for a moment because that requires certain things front that we've got certainly a good start on, but requires a little more information. But we could talk about procedurally how we could make sure that happens so that it's not.
We don't want you to go back to the very beginning. I'm trying to add any more expense onto you. And if you go back to the beginning, obviously it's adding a lot more expense. We're not trying to do that. We are just trying to get this and put it in whatever it should be. And we just have to make clear what kind of changes we're doing. And like I said, all the PUD doing is, it's, if there is a future, any property owner out there, any other business, if they want to put a building or something on their business, it's C2, it's, because realistically, what you presented to us right now, what you want to do now, falls under C1. But we see that we want to do some stuff in the future, so what we're trying to do is accommodate for that too. So you have to go back through and totally change all your zoning. So it's, but any other property, let's just take for instance a C2, if they want to add a building for storage or anything, they would have to go back to the BZA and say, hey, you know, I'd like to add this building and stuff like this, and go through the process and get it done. And so that's what I think needs to be done here. Not saying, hey, we're trying to restrict you, we're not trying to dictate everything you do, but it's just like a C3 is a wide open sweep. Once you get granted, stuff pop up everywhere, and that is what the residents don't want to see. And like I said, it's any other case where there's 10 unanimous adjoining property owners say no, it's been denied, and it was just denied in another township. So, and we're not trying to deny it. We want to see you. I think this would be a great building, and we ask you to be patient with us because obviously this is really the first type of scenario this township has run into. I mean, yeah, they've taken other buildings and turned them into businesses and stuff like that, but this is the first time. So we just need to work out work everything out. And we want to work with you. We don't want to see you go somewhere else or nothing like that because like I said, I see it as being a bust. But again, we have to consider everybody involved.
Sure.
And that's what we're trying to do. We got two different opinions, and that's why I said something in my statement about everyone has different opinions. How can we meet them there?
The restrictions in a PUD, who comes up with those? Is that a discussion that we all have and approve together with my legal counsel, or how does that, because, you know, I have to keep in mind our growing business. I have to keep in mind that I'm investing, you know, over $1 million, and I don't want to restrict the value of that building at the same time. And so, and that's why I said it, and that's not saying that I'm going to build this thing and sell it to, you know, the highest bidder. No, that's not my plan. We all know what my plan is at this point. And the protection that is in place for the township is that you can't
with a change of use, you can't just change a building, even how it's written today. And so there is to do a change of use, Shelby has to make sure it all lines up. If I add another building, I have to send him a site plan, and we have to review it, and he reviews it with a BZA member. That's how it's written now.
And that's what we're saying. It's
And so that sounds like what the PUD would accomplish too. And so I'm not against a PUD as long as we can come to an agreement of what we need and what our future needs are.
well, we can't say, like I said, we can't grant something on a what if, maybes. That's just too wide open.
Now, I'm not saying that either. I'm saying there's specifics that I need for my use
But
that I would want to say.
if you were to add another building, if you were to, like I said, the lower level, let's face it, it's really hard to put anything down in the flood zone. The upper level, you could terrace off some of it and put some stuff up in there for future use. But that, like I said, the only thing you have to do there is if you decided, okay, let's say this is phase one. Whatever your phase two decision is, you could bring it to Shelby, Mr. Barrett, and then take it from the BZA. The BZA would consider it just like anything. Like if a homeowner wanted to add a barn to their property, and let's say the offsets, so they take it to the BZA, and I served on the BZA for 4 years. I'm a trustee. And again, it was how can we meet you in the middle,
Mhm.
and that's what.
I think though with the PUD, I don't think. Approval by the zoning commission.
Depends on what he's wanting to do.
Board,
Yeah.
right?
Depends on what part of the project he's
But a
Some
new,
of it might go in front of the zoning commission, some of it might go in front of the BZA. But still, you're going to them present with what you want to do at that point. Then
zoning resolution that doesn't have the tier level conditional uses approved in every system will do the same thing.
But if your property is zoned for C3, it remains C3 unless it's rezoned again. Is my understanding.
Correct. But if I add on or change of use, I have to follow the current resolution.
I understand that. But I think to answer your question, which is, I think one of the benefits of the PUD is it allows you to define uses that are not necessarily clear in our current zoning. It allows us to get a plan and to get a full concept plan that is clear from the beginning. And
Sure.
to John's point, if we wanted to phase or add on, that could happen, if that could be accounted for. But there's a little more clarity around like your concept plan, and that's approved for purposes of.
Sure. My main thing on the PUD is that we want to make sure that it encompasses what we do and what we're going to do. I don't want to come back to revise my PUD, because when you do a PUD, that the rules are for that property, and I get that. And so every time I want to do something, I just don't want to be coming back to revise my PUD every time I extend my parking lot or put a gravel lot in, or put a lean-to on the side of the building for covered storage.
And I think there are certain things that are accounted for in here depending on the level of the change to the concept. Sort of, I think to John's point, identifies where you have to go to get that approval, depending on what you're trying to do. And so your initial question was, does this happen as more of a discussion? I think, and Shelby, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it is more of a discussion. As far as reaching the concept plan and deciding what that looks like, because the PUD zone changes and based on that.
Okay, and then my last question is the time frame. We want to start as soon as possible. And I've discussed this too, but we get into the wintertime next year, and I haven't dug my footers yet. I'm not building this for somebody. I don't need to put the slab in the winter. And so in that situation, I would push it off to the following spring, which then pushes me out of the 1 year start date for a PUD, and then it reverts back to ag. Now, we had discussed that as long as plans are in motion. I want to clarify that is the case.
We're in motion right now, yes.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
as long as the plans for the PUD is in motion. So it's saying once you approve a PUD in your zoning resolution,
yeah,
if the project doesn't start for a year, it reverts back to ag.
So there's two different steps, right? There's the approval of the initial concept plan. So you have a year. My understanding is a year within the approval of the initial concept plan to present a final development plan, and then a year from approval of the final development plan to actually start your construction. So I think, given the timeline you just described, depending on where this were to fall, I think that would provide you time. You wouldn't be caught in sort of that winter time pause that you've identified. I think you would fall.
There's two things. Can we do it quick enough to start this summer? Or can we start it next spring? I mean, there's two possibilities going on here, but, so there's just a lot of moving parts in the PUD.
Sure.
So make sure it's done well and make sure it's done right and it's done for our current use and future use.
But, if you don't mind, I just went through and made some conditions that I was thinking of to discuss. And this is because it is,
I mean, this would be, you're saying that these would be things you would want to see like a concept.
yes,
Right?
yeah. Like, I wrote down as condition number 1, was the fire hydrant. Per the fire department's request, the fire hydrant must be installed near the property. The location will be determined by taking the water, which is already determined. So that's no big deal. Condition number 2, when the time comes, the Board of Zoning Appeals can consider any acts of enterprise for variance for any future site changes needed to be placed on the upper 2.5 acres of the northeast side facing the cemetery with no outside storage. Again, the outside storage thing can be addressed by the building.
I wasn't following you when you were discussing the parking lot. What were you saying about, because my parking lot is on the cemetery side.
Yeah.
There's a pool around the Burke Road side.
Well, again, I don't want to limit you, but let's say what you proposed here, there is no parking lot on the right hand side.
No.
But it's, so if you don't have any future plans for a parking lot, you go 50 feet from your building and put in a row of trees. Okay, or if you plan on putting in a parking lot, you'd have 30 foot for a parking lot and just say another 50 from there. Okay, to give room. We're not trying to limit you, but what we're trying to do is give the residents concerns about the visual part of it. So let's just go with what we're talking, what you have here, no feet. But from the right-hand side of the building, if you want 50 feet from there, put up trees, that's going to go 20 foot. That's going to give you 30 to 35 feet from your building to the trees. But if you want down there and then across the back, again, if your proposed building, if you put it where it's at, with 40 by 80, you put a lean-to off the back side of it, give you your storage for your lumber. And again, let's say 50 feet from there. Well, you got 80, your building's 40 feet. So let's say you go back another 30 feet with gravel, so that way you can get into the back of the lean-to. Okay? But from 50 feet from your furthest part of your parking lot in the back, put in another row, put that row of trees L-shaped back there, which would then is taking you up toward the Dabney property, which is behind the cemetery. Okay? And then if you put anything on the left-hand side of your proposed building, any future, that would leave you future to terrace off, to put, if you needed another building or something, anything like that, anything, again, we're trying to make it to where you can grow, but we can also protect the citizens.
So we're talking about hundreds of trees.
But you gotta do something, you just can't.
There's 350 feet of trees on the property
But
line.
9 months out of the year, I can stand on Burke Road and see.
9 months.
3 months, you got
Okay.
trees and limbs.
Right.
You got fall, winter, and everything, and so 8 months out of the year, you can stand on Burke Road, and like right now, I can stand on Burke Road and see 125, which means they're all going to be able to see everything you got. So
You're saying when there's leaves on the trees, you can see 125 from Burke Road. You said 8 months out of the year, you can see
8 months
125.
out of the year, there's no leaves. There's leaves.
There are leaves.
But it's
leaves.
8 months out of the year, there are leaves.
October, and then they start really getting full in May. Okay? So there's 7 months minimum right there, that there are no leaves. It's pretty bare, and they'd be able to see through there. And, because October, they start falling. So, but anyway, there's a lot of time there that we have to take and consider for them. And like I said, the request that we're putting falls under even C1, and it said, I read it, it's providing an immediate effect for the planning. And so, even if you're coming in as a C, just operate a business, you still have to put up these trees here upon request. And like I said, we need any type of business. It says here, I know it says here shopping center, any type of business like that, they have to put this up, and that's all we're asking you to put up.
I get that. I'm just saying 350 feet of trees is a lot of buffer. 350 feet thick. and I walk the property. And I respect all neighbors. I'm going to respect all neighbors. And if I just planted 60 trees to protect me from my parents' house, you know, I get it. But I had to put them every 4 feet
You don't have to, if you put. I'm
or
looking
8
at-
feet, whatever it is. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of trees.
Let me give you an example of the tree plan, okay? Let me go go on down the conditions, that way we have them all covered, what I've got, okay? Condition number 3, plant first row of evergreen tree buffers at the lower level of the property along the Poplar Creek line, to provide privacy and noise reduction. Condition number 4, plant a second row of evergreens tree buffer on the southwest and southeast Burke Road residential sides of the property. The trees to be planted are 50 feet from the edge of the property in the building lot, in the parking lot, like I just said. Okay, the planting of the trees. Plant 2 rows of trees, give you 2 different options, however you do it. And again, we're not trying to put an expense on you, but we're trying to, so we're giving you my idea is to give you 2 different options you can choose from and try to figure out to accommodate the buffer and least expense on you. So planting option number 1, to plant 2 rows of 8-foot tall evergreen trees that is measured from the top of the root ball to the top of the leader, spaced every 20 feet apart from trunk to trunk, 2 rows to be staggered 10 foot apart. And if any evergreens die, they must be replaced at the next planting season. And planting option number 2, install a 4-foot dirt mound with a 4-foot tall evergreen trees planted on the top of the dirt mound. That is to be measured from the top of the root ball to the top of the leader, spaced every 20 feet apart from trunk to trunk. And 2 rows must be staggered 10 foot apart. If any evergreens die, they must be replaced at the next planting season. So we're giving you the option to put in some dirt, because you have to move dirt on up the upper hillside, so that you can take that dirt and put it around your building, and then put 4-foot trees instead of 8-foot trees. But the objective here is to get 8 foot of buffer from the very beginning. So that way, at the lower level, the residents that are down there, they won't see anything at the lower level. And then at the upper level, let's say halfway in the middle of your property, so that way it will help cover the stuff at the upper end of your property. And like I said, if you plant them every 20 foot apart, you don't have to plant them every foot, because you plant them every 10 foot apart, and again, they get 20 foot, so they're going to grow, and they're going to be, it's going to be a solid evergreen wall. And it's not, it cuts the cost way down from what you just described.
So if I don't put anything in the lower level, I need to put trees down there.
If nothing goes at the lower level, that way there's nothing to be seen.
Yeah, there's nothing, we don't have any
But
plans
you
for
said
the lower
something that
level.
you would like to give. What I was thinking on that is, you've got 12 acres here. And I'm trying to, obviously with floodplain, you can't do stuff because of the county level. But if you decided to, you'd have the trees down there, to protect them. If 10 years from now, you decide to use the lower level, just keep in mind, that those trees
Tree gotta
have
go.
to go up.
Yeah.
But that way that, if you're going to keep everything on the upper 2.5 side, put the trees around it, and that will block the view for the residents, yes.
Okay, so run it through me one more time. Upper level, we're talking about the east side and the north side.
Anything facing the Burke residence side, yes. The 125, no, the cemetery, no, but
I got that. And that's every 10 feet staggered.
they're 20 feet apart. Each row is 20 foot apart.
Yes.
Okay? But if you start first row at 0, the second row starts at 10.
Right. So I'm 10 feet apart. So I'm a tree every 10 feet.
You'll have to put.
Yeah, I got that. That's what we did. That's what we did to separate our property from my parents' property.
So basically, you have them.
But every 10 feet, I have a tree. Okay. And so we are 110 feet long, first building, 60 feet between that and the second building, another 40 feet. So that is 210 feet, 80 feet along the back, 290 feet. Divide that by 10, that's 29, that's 30 trees.
It's not a big expense.
It's not
And it's
terrible.
giving the people what they're asking.
Yep. Okay.
And again, if you try to cut your expense, you're just looking for an 8-foot wall of trees. You can either put up 8-foot pine trees from the very beginning,
A mound would be tough. It's sloping away.
but
So,
I'm just trying to think of options to try
Yep.
to give you options. If you come up with a third idea, as long as they have an 8-foot, bring it across us and
Okay.
says, But the objective here is to block the view from the residents.
All right.
And if we come up with, the reason I read these conditions like this is we can come up with an agreement on something like that, this can be moving along real quick.
I think it has to follow the procedure set for the PUD approval procedure, right? But I mean, I think that these kinds of discussions can sort of identify what's important as far as the things that, and you've heard a lot of the concerns, obviously, and we're doing our best to try to address those, and we're also sensitive to the fact, you know, your point that you would like to make sure that you have the ability to do what you wanna do. But I think that needs to be defined in a way that can then be clear and set and part of a concept, right? So that it's not such a question. And I think this would require that happen.
So how does that part work as far as making those decisions and making the PUD? When does that happen? Is that a special meeting? Is it a whole nother trustee
What I
meeting?
would suggest in the interest of time, so that we can make sure that we also hear from the public, is that that's a conversation I think that can be had outside of the meeting, so that you can consider what that looks like and whether this is an option, as we're still considering this as well. But obviously, we would need to understand if this would be something that you would be open to. So I think that this sort of procedural posture that would go in could be a discussion sort of outside of this meeting.
Okay.
One thing I would like to add is, okay, you said something about nothing is at the lower level, but trees have to be. Now you, obviously, I think we need to look at this as, we don't want to limit you. If for some reason in the future, you thought 10 years from now, you might have, capable of using the lower end, then you do put the trees up, so that way 8 foot, they have their wall. If, I don't know, if you figure 10 years, you might do that, 8 years from now, put the trees in or something, so that way they have to do it from the very beginning, there's never.
I think that would have to be something.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?